Hi there, my name is Juliet. Welcome to Capulet Books. Today I'm here with my July wrap-up where I read 9 books that I'm very excited to share with you guys. So I hope you enjoyed this video and thanks for watching. So I started this month sitting for my final exams at university for my first term as a history student. So it was a very stressful first half of the month, and then I had my winter holidays, which were the exact opposite. I still managed to read a lot of books, so I hope you enjoyed these reviews. They were a lot of fun. I think I read many great books, so let's dive into it. So the first book I read in July was Forest of Souls by Lori M. Lee, which I gave 2 out of 5 stars, so you can see that one was a disappointment. I was very excited about this book, like the hype was so high, the cover is gorgeous, everyone's been talking so good about it, and it was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. But it just didn't work for me. I thought this book was Asian fantasy, and I'm really interested in that. I love fantasy, I love diverse fantasy, so I thought I was diving into that kind of read because that's what everyone's been saying. But Forest of Souls is not Asian fantasy, and the author herself has said so. This book is more like Asian people in fantasy, meaning the Asian community being represented in the normal Western fantasy tales, which is great. It just wasn't what I was interested in reading, and that's what bothered me the most. I thought I was reading something that was not the case, so instead I found a very cliched plot and very flat characters I think I read thousands of times before. I don't think this is anything new. The book did have some Asian culture here and there, like a little bit of shamanism in the magic system. That's it. I think it's a book I've read a million times before. I don't feel like it's something new. The themes explored by the author are great, but everything's just too pink, too perfect, too rainbow colored, too flat, too heroic, too black and white, and that's not what I'm interested in reading anymore. Maybe it's a good book, but I just didn't enjoy it. It wasn't what I wanted to read, and even if I read it, it wasn't something I liked. So the next book I read was We Used to Be Friends by Amy Spalding, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars, and it's one of my new favorite contemporary books of all times. This is the story of 2 best friends that grow up and apart as time goes by. It's narrated in quite a peculiar form. We have 2 timelines that we have to follow, and normally I would say that's very confusing, especially for a contemporary book, but that's not the case at all. We Used to Be Friends is exactly that. It's the story of 2 best friends that are no longer best friends, and their friendship was perfect once and it seemed everlasting, and that's real life. I don't think we have any YA books like this one ever. I believe that We Used to Be Friends is a fantastic novel that we haven't seen before and that we need to read because it's just so real. That's what happens. Not all friendships work out. Some friendships do last forever, and others are perfect for the people you are in a certain time of your life, and then you grow up and you evolve and you change because that is what humans do. And as you grow up, the people who are perfect for you once are no longer your people, and not all friendships have a happy ending. Tell me, how many times have you read a book like that? I personally hadn't. We Used to Be Friends, it's so original. It's unnervingly human. I was amazed by how I connected with the characters, with the plot, with the idea of the book. I was expecting them to become friends. And this might seem like a spoiler, like I'm telling you they don't become friends at the end, but I'm not spoiling you because that is the plot itself. You need to know that it doesn't have a happy ending. That's the point of the book. It's about friends who are no longer friends. It's about losing friendships and the fact that that happens in real life. The next book I read was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex C. Harrow, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I was very excited about this book. I just look at the cover, look at it, look at the cover. I didn't know anything about the book when I started it. I admit that I only read it for the cover. Well, and also the positive reviews, many of you have been loving it. I think this book is just too similar to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, one of my favorite books. And I think it just failed in execution of basically everything. The characters were promising, they looked fantastic, and they just weren't. The world building looked so exciting, and then it just wasn't. The plot looked amazing. It was not what it promised to be. I think I've read this book 1,000 times before, and I think it's one of those novels that promises to be something fantastic and then fails to execute it. Yes, my biggest issue with this novel was the way it was written. I was expecting something that never came, and I wasn't expecting it because of myself. I expected it because that's what the book promises when it begins. So you have this story about a girl who finds a door to stranger worlds. It's basically a romance story to literature. It's a love letter to books, to finding fantasy, to stranger worlds, and to going down the rabbit hole as Alice did. It's one of those magical stories that pretends to enamor the minds of those who love fantasy. That's the impression you get when you start the book. But then the story goes on and it isn't what you were promised. I think the execution of everything in the novel was so flat, so simple, so incomplete. I didn't enjoy it. The next book I read was Unravel the Saints by Alaya Dawn Johnson, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I read it because everyone's been loving it. It was one of my most anticipated books of the year, but it just wasn't for me. I got really bored. The world building was excellent. It was so unique, so different, so diverse, so inspiring. One of those books that if you're a writer like myself, you just really enjoy because it's different, it's unique, it's very new and fresh and interesting. Apart from what I could get from it as a writer, I didn't enjoy it. It was just boring. I didn't get excited. It was interesting to read. I think it was a very good story on paper, but it just didn't feel anything. The next one is You Say It First by Katie Kotugna, which I gave 5 stars and I loved. One of my new favorite contemporary books. And I'm not a person for contemporary books. This is a story of a rich girl who works in a political organization and makes calls to people in the United States for them to enroll to vote, because as you may know, many people don't vote in the United States. And one day she calls this guy who is just super against politics. He doesn't believe in politics at all. He doesn't believe in democracy. He doesn't want to vote. And he's going through a harsh time in his life, so this call from this stranger, this girl who has every privilege he lacks, it's exactly the last thing he needs. But somehow these totally opposite people develop a friendship, and maybe something more. It's a very sweet and fresh and amazing romance story that I really enjoyed. It was a lot of fun to read. It was so politically interesting. We don't have many YA books about politics, and this one's about politics, and it's not boring at all. It's a very fresh book in terms of new content, in terms of things we need to be discussing today. I was surprised by how new it was, how it tackled issues that we have today about democracy and politics and everything that's going wrong with our world today. And I was also stunned by how feminist it was. The author tackles so many problematic things in today's society in a way that just shocked me. We don't get to see that in fiction that often. It's unusual and it's important and necessary. You Say It First by Katie Kotugna is not only a very exciting, sweet, and beautiful book to read, it's also a very important one. Having fun and learning and tackling the problematic of our society, why wouldn't you read it? The next book is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I was not that excited about this one, but it's been a while since I've read historical fiction, and I sincerely enjoy those books, so I gave this one a chance. Everyone was talking wonders about it, and it just looked great. I mean, Mexican historical fiction is not abundant in literature today, so I gave it a chance, and I ended up getting bored. It just wasn't for me. The characters, the way it was written, I didn't enjoy the way it was written. It was all too strange, too unnecessarily long. The only good thing I can say about Mexican Gothic was the world building. The Mexican atmosphere is fantastic. It's just great. It was a lot of fun. It was very complex. I had a lot of fun with how Mexican this book is. It's an own voices story, and if you want to give it a chance, you totally should, because it's different to what we usually read. I don't know, it's unique. I got bored, but I think it's a good one. Next up, we've got Unravel the Dusk by Elizabeth Lim, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and I have mixed feelings about this one. This is the sequel to Spin the Dawn, which I loved. It was one of my favorite books of 2020 so far, but I didn't like this one as much. I think it's a great sequel. It's very fresh, it's very original. The second books in a series always have to be more than the first book. In my opinion, Unravel the Dusk is not the case, and I just wasn't interested in this story. I thought that I was, and that's why I started reading it, but turns out I wasn't. I loved Spin the Dawn because it was so new. The author's writing is so beautiful. I loved it. It was all just too magical. One of those books that are filled with magic, and it was very beautiful. I loved it. It was so passionate, so pure. I had a lot of fun with Spin the Dawn. Now looking back at it, it's not such a big deal, but for me at the time it was, and it blew my mind in a way that just left a stain saying favorite 2020 book. Now time has gone by and I'm not that interested in the story anymore. So Unravel the Dusk was a lot of fun. It was just as beautiful, but personally I wasn't interested in it anymore. So yes, I'm giving it 4 stars. I totally recommend it. I love this series, but I'm not personally attached anymore. That's it. And the next one is so exciting. I'm super happy with this book. I might do a whole review later on the channel. I'm talking about Loveless by Alice Oseman. Of course, 5 out of 5 stars. This is one of my new contemporary favorite books of 2020 and of my whole life. I adore Alice Oseman. She's just a freaking genius. Loveless was everything I wanted it to be and more. It's a book about what it means to be asexual and aromantic. So it's also an own voices story because Alice Oseman is asexual and aromantic. Before starting this book, I thought I knew what being asexual meant, but then I read Loveless and it turns out I had a lot of information either wrong or incomplete. It's just one of the best books you can read if you want to learn about this topic, about this part, if you want to put it that way, of the LGBTQ community. If you're looking for a book that's just so much fun, so entertaining, so pure and honest, that you actually learn from it, and that you acquire knowledge that is great for the world out there, then you have to read Loveless. It's fantastic. Alice Oseman is just freaking genius. All of her books are lovely and so relatable. I just adored Loveless. It's everything that's right in this world right now. Please, I'm begging you, please, to read it. Loveless it's perfect. It's just perfect. And the next and final book is Serpentthorne by Melissa Bashir-Dust, which I gave 4 out of 5 stars, and it was a lot of fun. The cover of this book is either beautiful or hideous, and we all disagree on it. I personally wasn't interested in reading this book until I found out who the author was. Melissa Bashir-Dust is also the author of Girls of Snow and Glass. I don't know, I really enjoyed that one. So when I found out she was the author of Serpentthorne, I went for it. It was just amazing. It was so much fun, so original, and it's Persian inspired. So it's kind of diverse, if you want to put it that way, because I also found the diversity in the book a little bit problematic. I don't understand why the book's diverse. Like, it's great, but it clashed too much with the story. It was just so, like, I thought that the author was trying to mix things that didn't go together, or that she failed to execute together. The characters were also very good. Everything was pinky and perfect. I was more interested in reading a book with anti-heroes, with morally grey characters. That's not what I found here. So that was disappointing, but I also had a great time. So it's definitely a book I recommend if you like fantasy novels and you're interested in a dark twist to the usual tales we read. So if you enjoyed this content, don't forget to hit the subscription box and turn on your notifications if you wanna know when I upload new videos. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and see you the next time.